What's up, guys? So here we are with this week's Q&A. Again, if you want more context to the training that you're seeing on video, follow me on Instagram, links in description. That's where you can DM me for coaching inquiries as well. But let's get right into it. So I wanted to pin this one. Noisy716 asks, can you still make gains on a low protein diet? I'm very broke. How should I modify my training with a low protein diet? Should I focus more on building strength and gaining muscle? So absolutely, you can still make gains on a low protein diet. I read some of the thread there. It seems like you're doing the best you can to get protein in, and finding cheap ways to get protein in is great. That said, especially if you're in a caloric surplus, your training is going to dictate your growth. You have enough calories to sustain and fuel yourself, so nothing's being wasted. You have extra energy for extra tissue, and your body is going to use the carbs and fats as energy and store some of the excess, and the protein is still going to be able to build muscle. You do not need like a super high amount of protein to gain weight and or gain muscle and or gain strength. You should be fine if you're in that caloric surplus. I would focus on your training, whatever training suits your style. Whether it's muscle building is your goal, hypertrophy, do that. You don't need to alter your training based on your perceived low amount of protein. As long as you're getting adequate calories in, you are going to be fine. And again, get your protein in when you can get it. This you got to eat 250 grams, 300 grams of protein stuff came from dudes on anabolics who could, their body can make use of all that protein because their hormones are artificially elevated. And that's why we got all these mega high protein numbers in bodybuilding magazines and stuff back in the day. We are not that. I'm going to guess that you're a natty since you're on my channel. No offense if you're not. And being that you said you're broke, you probably can't afford drugs either. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Just do you, bro. And, focus on total calories and being great in your training. When you cut weight, that's when protein is paramount, because then you're losing tissue. And that's the only time I ever focus exclusively on protein and making sure I'm hitting some bare minimums is when I'm cutting weight, because I want to spare as much muscle tissue as possible. And while my body's losing tissue, again, training is still going to be the most important because you want to give your body the signals to hold on to the muscle because you need it. But that's when protein should be of a higher emphasis. So for now, while you're quote unquote broke, focus on your calories, focus on your training, and then, get big, strong, jacked. And when it's time to shed some of those pounds, hopefully you're making a little bit more money then. And then make sure you're emphasizing protein. Like I said, for me, bulking, I don't even count my protein. I really don't count it right now. I'm kind of in this maintenance phase either. That said, I know I generally, I'm getting around 200 grams of protein. I usually have like a pound of meat in some form of my meals during the day. Then I'm also eating eggs. I'll have protein shakes, and Greek yogurt's a big thing of mine. So with my eyes closed and not counting, I know I'm getting right around 200 grams of protein every day. And it's not a big deal if I hit it or not on a given day. If I was cutting, I would be aiming for, even though I only weigh 230 pounds now, I'd still be aiming for like 275 grams of protein, 300 grams of protein if I was cutting, just because I emphasize it that much more when I'm cutting weight to try and spare some muscle tissue. Are ATG pause squats like Zach Tellender mentioned in one of his latest videos worth it in a powerlifting contest? Yes, not contest, context. Don't want anybody to get that mistaken there. But yes, it'd be an off-season movement. Something to build muscle, help with your mobility, things of that nature. I know Zach said not to even focus on the weight in the context. He was describing it as, just think of it as a weighted stand-up, I believe he called it. But absolutely, if you look at some of my training videos over the last couple months, and I do it with the SSB, but I go way exaggerated deep positions, and for pause squats, even like the first SSBs you saw in this video, I went way deeper than necessary for powerlifting. Now I wasn't pausing them or sitting there, but yeah, for mobility, for getting strong out of a disadvantageous position for a powerlifter, it's going to have so much carryover. Obviously, when you get into like a meet prep or something, that's unnecessarily deep, and you don't want to be pausing when it gets close to meet when you start getting highly specific. But yeah, there's so many benefits to doing what Zach's doing. Probably for any training modality. I'm going to get out of my lane here for just a second and say that even if you're a bodybuilder, if you're a strongman, CrossFitter, weightlifter, general strength enthusiast, whatever the case may be, those are going to be of benefit to you. So yeah, in powerlifting context as well, you just don't want to be doing that like 2 weeks out from a meet, because you should be dialed in at that point. But otherwise, yeah, absolutely great. I did a little too much pressing over the last couple of weeks. Because of that, my right shoulder started to hurt. Hey, I'm right shoulder hurty myself. Cases like these where small overuse injury happens, what do you recommend a lifter should do? Should we keep pressing with lower weight and volume, lay off pressing a week or two? Looking forward to your advice. I'm not a doctor, so don't take this as medical advice, of course. Give it a week or two off first. Just don't stop moving it. Like, if you can just keep it in motion in some way. It doesn't necessarily have to be weighted. But I would take like at least a week or so off at first, and then start slowly adding weight and volume to it. And do not get to the point of aggravation. If that ever it comes to a point in your progression when you're coming back where you start to feel even the slightest bit of aggravation, stop and back off, and just push it right to that point of aggravation, but not to aggravate, just up to it. As much as you can progressively over the weeks and months. And honestly, after a month or so, maybe 2 months, depending upon how much the strain was, you should be back to normal. But again, I would just take a week off, maybe 2 weeks off, just keep motion around the area, and then start going back to it just in very small doses and pushing it right up to that point as best you can. Do you believe in body fat percent set point, as in your body will return to 30% body fat if you've been at that stage for most of your life? I believe that you can manipulate your body fat with your diet and your training in conjunction with each other, and make that choice regardless of where your body wants to be. I'm speaking out of my ass here. I'm not super well versed there in a body fat percent set point, but you're in control of your diet and your training, so just focus on your diet and your training. I don't give a fuck where my body wants to go. It'll go where I tell it to go. What's a lift/exercise that you wish you found earlier in your lifting journey? Front squats. Easily front squats. When you overtrain a muscle to bring it up and you're done with that block of training, how much do you feel you need to maintain it? All right, I wouldn't call it overtraining. I would just say, putting extra emphasis on it. Overtraining is kind of another term, just getting into semantics there. But generally speaking, yeah, if you're bringing up a lagging area and you finish that block where you hyper-focused on it, I would expect a little bit of drop-off after you're done with it. And I'm speaking in terms of muscular strength. If you're speaking in terms of hypertrophy, maybe ask somebody else. But I would expect a little bit of drop-off, just because that's what happens after you peak something. But you should just be able to put it back to regularly scheduled training after that, and you should maintain most of the gains that you made aside from that slight drop-off. Peace!